Dr. Death, a Patricia Fisher mystery. Written by Steve Higgs. Narrated by Jill Mills. Operation Fat Wallet. I watched from behind wide designer sunglasses, pretending to read a magazine as I surveyed the scene and tried to keep my impatience in check. Across from me, my good friends Akamu and Rick, two senior citizens from Hawaii, were laughing raucously as they told jokes and annoyed each other. They were at the cabana bar next to the top deck open-air pool where they were supposed to be acting a little drunk. The thing is, they weren't acting anymore. At least, I didn't think they were. We set up an hour ago, just the three of us, on an unsanctioned and self-appointed mission to catch a pickpocket who had been plaguing the ship for the last week. We are passengers aboard the Aurelia, Purple Star Cruise Line's finest and most luxurious ship, and I am the guest staying in the finest suite on the whole ship. Originally intended to house royals when they came aboard, I came to be the lady in the Windsor suite by a quirk of fate brought on by a cruel blow that turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me. I'm Patricia Fisher, one-time wife to a philandering git, and now, somehow, I am travelling the world and, while discovering myself, the tenacious woman hidden inside the bedraggled wife, I have also discovered that I am something of a sleuth. Though I shook off my husband and have no companion with me, I am not alone. I have a butler appointed to me and have made several friends on board, two of whom are now my accomplices as we try to solve the pickpocket case before the onboard security team can. There is no reason for my involvement, other than because I want to solve the case and catch the thief. Rick and Akamu are retired police officers, both enjoying the forgotten thrill of the chase. Not that they will be giving chase to anyone. They are both well into their 70s and a little wobbly on their feet. Their top speed can best be described as a shuffle. Anyway, the pickpocket has struck the bar/pool area several times in the last few days, generally picking on people with fat wallets or open handbags as they joyously pay too little attention to their belongings. That's where Rick and Akamu come in. They were drinking under the shade of the bar and making sure their wallets, bulging with notepaper, not cash, were sticking out their back pockets for all to see. Unfortunately, over an hour had slipped by and no one had tried to relieve them of their cash and cards yet. Safely tucked inside my magazine was my phone. Jermaine, my butler, had helped me construct an ingenious spy device so I could film the theft, if it occurred, while appearing to be doing nothing of the sort. Using cardboard, he reinforced the magazine to give it rigidity, then taped my phone in place so the lens looked out of the iris of the model on the front cover. It worked, too. Glancing down at my magazine, I could see both men and the barman moving about behind them. The screen, though, was covered in dog snot, as the tiny dachshund balanced on my lap kept nudging the screen with her nose, tracking my fingers as I zoomed in and out. "Anna," I said impatiently, for what must have been the 50th time in the last hour. She inverted her head to look up at me, as if I was saying her name so I could feed her a treat. When we made eye contact, I said, "Stop touching the screen. You're making it slimy." She tilted her head, as if trying to make sense of my words, then licked her own nose and put her head back on my lap. I tried to dry the smears from the screen with the edge of my thin sarong. Turning my attention back to the bar, a young couple had just collected drinks and were walking away again, but had not gone near either man's wallet. Just then, Rick slapped Akamu on his meaty arm and slid from his stool. I couldn't hear what he was saying, but it looked like the drinks had worked their way through his system, so he was off to visit the nearest amenities. A pair of old ladies, each of whom had to be aged somewhere around 80, made their way to the bar. The cruise attracted a lot of retirement-aged travellers, possibly because they now had the time to indulge in the long trips, or possibly because they recognised they wouldn't need to hang on to their money for much longer. Whichever the case, these two were typical passengers, and I'd met them in the bar a couple of days ago when we all ordered gin at the same time. They were Caucasian with silver hair, though one had a blue rinse that contrasted with the pink cotton dress she wore to give a kind of bubblegum effect. As they came around a kamu, one wobbled slightly and bumped his arm, knocking his drink as he lifted it. I could see her apologising while laughing at herself, a hand to her chest to show her embarrassment. Then Anna growled, and I tracked her gaze to find, to my left, that a shifty-looking young man in a tracksuit and matching ball cap had appeared. Why would he be wearing a tracksuit? There was a slight breeze today which disguised the true heat, but it had to be close to 100 degrees out of the shade. He bore all the hallmarks of a character to watch. He was trying to look nonchalant, but failing miserably, walking at an unnatural pace and looking nervous. He made a beeline for the bar, but when he got there, he didn't try to get to the bar itself. Pausing for a couple of seconds as he walked behind a kamu and peering over his head as if looking for someone, I saw his hands move in front of his body as he did something before moving on. With his back to me, he had effectively blocked any chance I had of filming him commit the crime, but as he moved away, a kamu's back pocket was starkly bereft of his wallet, and the young man had increased his pace, heading across the sundeck area to the nearest door and escape. "Stop!" I yelled as loudly as I could. 100 heads turned in my direction as I pointed to the young man. "Stop him! He just stole a wallet!" Anna barked and leapt from my lap, her lead whipping through my hands before I could get a grip on it, and she was off, sprinting across the sundeck at a speed that was frankly surprising for a dog with 1-inch legs. The man in the tracksuit and ball cap stared at her in disbelief, then started running. I was off my sun lounger but couldn't have caught the man even if I possessed superpowers. I didn't have to, though. Anna was barking as she ran, attracting the attention of everyone on the sundeck. Kids and parents alike were standing up or standing on their loungers to see what was happening. A kamu was up and moving too, though I passed him and left him behind as I chased my little dog. The thief in the tracksuit was going to get away, though. He had too great of a head start and was moving too fast for even Anna to catch him before he got to the nearest door and could escape her. He put his arms out to push the doors open as he got to them, but glanced back at Anna as he did, so he didn't see Rick operating the storm seal latches on the other side. Rick saw the ruckus, saw the man running and me pointing, and took an educated guess. The man hit the locked door at full speed, the effect much the same as running into a brick wall as he splattered against it and bounced off. It didn't knock him out, but it sure took the wind out of his sails. Dazed, he fell to the deck as a shocked gasp rippled around the crowd. The gasps, however, soon turned to cries of dismay as my untrained and disobedient dog caught up to him and bit hold of his arm. Slipping in my elegant, expensive and completely impractical wedge-heeled shoes, there was nothing I could do to stop her. It worried me that she might hurt him, and then there would be questions raised about whether she was dangerous. I was just getting used to having her around, and she was so sweet, but my worries were, thankfully, unfounded. The man in the tracksuit was sitting up again and had lifted his right arm into the air. Anna was hanging from it and shaking from side to side as she did her best to kill him by worrying the material of his sleeve. He uttered a few expletives and gave his arm a shake, his efforts succeeding only in making a nearby mother cover her child's ears in case he had anything else to say. "Anna!" I shouted again, this time my voice causing the tiny dog to pause her efforts so she could peer at me, even as she hung in midair. Rick finally got the doors open again, but the commotion inevitably drew the attention of ship security. There were white uniforms converging on our location at speed, while everyone on the sundeck was still watching us, their heads swinging about between me, the white uniforms, Mr. Tracksuit, my overly aggressive dog, and the old man stumbling out through the door by the thief's feet. Mr. Tracksuit tried to get to his feet, looking around for his hat and acting a little dazed, but he was quickly surrounded by security, their pace and youth getting them there at the exact same time as me. "Put the dog down, sir," instructed Lieutenant Baker, a tall, strong man I had come to know quite well during my time on board. Mr. Tracksuit looked up at him with a sneer. "Put it down? Put it down? Are you kidding me? How about someone gets it off of me before I bash its head in?" I ducked between two uniforms to rescue Anna, clamping my hands around her muscular torso to pull her away, though she refused to let go. Instead, she continued to growl at the man and shake her head violently. "She's ripping the material now," he whined, getting upset. I lowered my head so my mouth was alongside her ear. "Come along, Anna," I begged. "You're making me look bad." In the end, with the security team waiting somewhat impatiently, Rick and Akamu swaying from the alcohol, and hundreds of onlookers craning their necks for a better view, I slid my finger into the back of her mouth and prized her jaw open. She contorted her body so she could lick my face, panting from the effort and looking ever so pleased with herself. "Thank you," the man said, not meaning a word of it. "Now, would someone like to tell me what's going on?" With Anna secured under one arm, I stepped forward before Lieutenant Baker or anyone else had a chance to react. "I'll tell you what's going on. You got caught, young man. Now, hand it over, please." Next to me, Lieutenant Baker sighed. "Mrs. Fisher, if I might take over now." He shot me a pair of raised eyebrows as he waited for me to step back, saying, "Thank you," as I acknowledged that I didn't actually have any authority here. He opened his mouth to speak to Mr. Tracksuit, but paused and spoke to me first. "I must say, it is so unusual to find you in the thick of it, Mrs. Fisher." His flippant comment was delivered with a smile, though, and I gave him an innocent face in response, as if I had no idea what he was talking about. "Hey," said Mr. Tracksuit, bringing everyone's attention back to him. "How about someone tells me what is going on?" This time Baker did address him. "Sir, I must insist that you hand it over now, please." "Don't know what you're talking about," Mr. Tracksuit retorted. "Lieutenant Deepa Bakari said, 'We saw you take this man's wallet.'" She indicated Akamu. "We need to escort you to a secure area for questioning and inspect your cabin for other property we believe you may have taken." "You didn't see me take anything," he claimed defiantly. "Search me. Go on, search me," he demanded as he lifted his arms to assume a classic pat-down pose. His confidence was worrying. Had he ditched the wallet? If so, where? I looked about to see if he'd passed a trash can. His prints or DNA would be on the wallet if we found he'd thrown it already. There was nothing in sight, though. Lieutenant Baker searched the man, but, as expected, he found nothing. He certainly didn't find Akamu's wallet. Wrinkling my nose, I looked back at the bar. The two old ladies were no longer there. "Lieutenant Baker, could I have a quiet word?" He stepped to one side with me, away from the others who were still surrounding the man in the tracksuit. We were creating a scene, more than usual, I mean, and would have to move away soon. As Baker stepped close to me so I could speak quietly, I ran it through my head again. I was about to accuse a pair of pensioners. There was another couple near Akamu when his wallet went missing. I said. Baker eyed me in confusion for a second, then said, "You don't mean the little old ladies, do you? The kid gets to lift the wallet, but then palms it to one of the ladies who totters away with it in her handbag. Perfect setup. No way." Lieutenant Baker didn't like it, but I persisted. The wallet is gone, Mr. Tracksuit doesn't have it, and he hasn't had a chance to put it anywhere. If the ladies didn't take it, then where is it? His shoulders slumped in defeat. "Okay, Mrs. Fisher. Let's take a look at the lovely little old ladies." Then he turned to the other security members just a few feet away. "Take him to holding, please. Identify him and wait there. Mrs. Fisher and I will be along soon." Baker started to walk away, touching my elbow gently to get me moving also. "Just the two of us?" I asked. "I doubt our quarry will put up much of a fight. If it's them, I will call security to join me at their cabin." Baker was moving swiftly, walking, not running, but not hanging about either. He had a question for me, though. "How is it that you came to be chasing him, Mrs. Fisher? It feels like too much coincidence for it to be your friend whose wallet was taken." We set a trap, okay? I admitted, setting Anna down but keeping a good hold on her lead this time, as she instantly started pulling against it. What were you doing there? It's my job, he drawled, as if he shouldn't have to remind me. We also had a trap set up, but I guess yours was more attractive. We hit the doors to go inside on the opposite side of the sun deck from where we had been. Do you know where you're going? I asked. Baker pointed down the passageway ahead of us. Yes, I helped the old ladies with some bags yesterday. He fell silent for a moment, though it seemed like he wanted to say something else, so I kept quiet too. Just before we reached the next corner, he said, Of course, I'm now wondering if the bags were theirs, because there have been reports of shopping going missing. Shopping? Clothes, designer goods. Some of the shops on board sell expensive items that might be attractive to a thief. I think maybe I helped them carry stolen goods to their cabin. He said it with a sigh, and as we turned the corner, we both saw the old ladies ahead of us. They were about to get into an elevator. Ladies, stop! Baker shouted, drawing the attention of everyone in sight, including the old ladies. Their eyes went wide with panic, but they didn't stop as instructed. Instead, they dashed inside the elevator car, bumping into each other as they did, which caused items to spill from a handbag as they desperately stabbed the button to close the doors. Baker and I were both running, little Anna's feet skidding on the deck as she attempted to break the sound barrier while I held her in check on her lead. The doors closed before we could get there, though, the faces of the two ladies looking scared as they backed against the rear wall of the car and vanished from sight. They escaped, but not for long. Baker knew their cabin number. On the deck by our feet were two wallets. Anna was sniffing them. Am I okay to pick these up? I asked, but Baker was already on his radio, coordinating a response that would meet him at the ladies' cabin. As he did that, I knelt on the deck and fished in my own handbag for a pen. Using it so I didn't get my fingerprints on the wallets, I flicked them both open. Neither was a Carmou's. The first showed a Fiji address on the driver's licence in the clear plastic picture bit inside. The man was broad with an unsmiling face, as one always gets with such pictures, but his age was listed as 62, and we had his name so the crew would be able to return his property. The second one didn't have a driver's licence displayed inside. Instead, it had what looked like the identification for a doctor of some kind. It looked to be in Filipino, though there was no address shown. Scanning the details, I saw doctor written next to the word immunology. I was willing to bet that immunology was the same word most places, so it meant exactly what I thought it meant. I need those, please, said Baker, kneeling next to me to carefully scoop both wallets into two separate evidence bags, using a plastic gloved hand. I have a team meeting me at the ladies' cabin. It looks like another case closed. I went with him, though there was no need for me to do so. I like closure, I guess. Baker's confidence in closing the case was premature, though, because the ladies were not there when we arrived. However, the question of whether they were the thieves or not was answered unequivocally. The ladies had absconded to somewhere else on the ship and were, no doubt, hiding out and wondering what to do, but their cabin was filled with stolen goods. Wallets, pieces of jewellery, purses and handbags, shopping bags filled with the expensive designer-labelled items Baker described were strewn across the bed and the chest of drawers and the dressing table and even stacked in the corners. Lieutenant Bakari whistled appreciatively. Wow, this is quite the haul. Does anyone know how long they've been on board? Lieutenant Pippin, another crew member I knew, answered, I'm just looking that up now. Across the room, Baker was looking over the shoulders of two other men as they peered inside some of the bags. This is going to take a while to catalogue and return. One said, We have a day, replied Baker. When we dock in Phuket tomorrow, some passengers will be getting off and we need to have their belongings returned to them. You're kidding, right? The man asked. Baker eyed him curiously. It will take far longer if you bellyache instead of getting started. His subordinate looked like he wanted to say something, but chose instead to get on with it, as suggested. Anders spoke up to break the tension. The ladies got on in Singapore. They are Irish, though. Their names are Agnes Eldritch and Mavis de Maurier. He looked up from the tablet in his hands. I suppose we need to circulate their pictures and find them. Bakari asked, "What do we do about the man we already took into custody?" Baker pointed a finger at Pippin. "Is he linked to the ladies?" Pippin busied himself typing on the tablet, but said, "I don't know, not that I can see. They got on in different places, come from different countries, and are staying on different decks." "Then we let him go and apologise," concluded Baker. "I'll do that myself. Pippin, get the pictures circulated to all crew and inform Commander Shriver. Bakari, you take charge here and seal off the room. I suggest you work quietly and with the door closed. If they cannot see anyone, the ladies may attempt to return and walk right in on top of you." I nodded at his plan. It was simple and might yield them an easy win. As Baker excused himself to deal with the man in the tracksuit, I realised I had no further purpose and was most likely in the way. I wasn't satisfied about Mr. Tracksuit, though. He had been wearing a sweat-inducing outfit in 100-degree sunshine, and there had to be a reason for that. Checking to make sure no one was watching, I surreptitiously knocked the 2 wallets we found by the elevators into my handbag. Baker had placed them on the dressing table in their plastic evidence bags, and they were still there, unguarded amid all the other detritus. I was going to return them, and there was more than enough evidence in the cabin to convict Agnes and Mavis, so it wasn't as if I was doing anything wrong. That's how I explained it to Anna, at least. I wanted to meet a couple of the victims. I had a few questions to ask. Dr. Mendoza. To see if I could root out the truth about Mr. Tracksuit, I first needed to obtain cabin numbers for the 2 men in question. I could do that back in my suite using Jermaine's login details to access Central Registry. I wasn't supposed to know Jermaine's login and password for the crew's onboard system, of course, but he and I had come to trust each other during my time on board, and there had been a few instances when we needed information to get us out of trouble. Back in my suite, I unclipped Anna's lead and put down my handbag with the wallets inside so I could check on Jermaine. The tall Jamaican man had been at my beck and call since I came aboard the ship in Southampton and seemed to be available any time I was awake. But today, when I eyed him suspiciously and insisted he tell me the truth, he admitted that he was feeling rather under the weather. His very British phrase sounded perfectly at home in his fake Downton Abbey butler's accent, but having given up the truth, he then slumped against the counter, and I helped him back through to his adjoining cabin behind my kitchen. There, I demanded he lie down and rest, and could tell that he was truly ill when he silently complied. I called the ship's doctor and waited an hour for him to arrive. That it took that long was a clear indication of how many passengers and crew were coming down with something. A ship is an enclosed environment, so a cold or virus goes around fast. The doctor wasn't sure what people had, but it appeared to be virulent and attacking all the body's systems at once. I left only once Jermaine was settled. The doctor prescribed him nothing more than paracetamol. He assured me that antibiotics were not appropriate and that his 2 colleagues, there were 3 doctors on the ship, were conducting tests to work out what they were trying to treat. My hope to find him feeling better and perhaps dusting or ironing was dashed, though, when I came into my living area to the sound of utter silence. I knocked gently on his door. "Jermaine, are you in there? How are you feeling?" I called out as I pushed his door open. From the bed came a weak reply. "My apologies, madam. I appear to have fallen asleep. If you would be so generous as to give me a few moments, I will return to my duties." He was attempting to sit up in his bed. "You'll do no such thing," I insisted, as I put a hand to his chest to arrest his movement. "The doctor said you were to stay in bed unless absolutely necessary." There was a sheen of sweat on his face to show the fever burning inside. "Can I get you some water?" As he settled back onto his pillow, I fetched a fresh pitcher and glass anyway and returned to his cabin to find Anna sitting on his chest. She wasn't making it any easier for him to breathe and was trying to nuzzle his face for affection. When I lifted her back down to the deck, he said, "Thank you, madam." Then added, "I worry, madam, that I might be infectious. Perhaps it might be best if you limit your exposure." He had a point, but I had already been exposed and felt fine so far. I didn't want to catch whatever he had, but I also didn't want to leave him to fend for himself when he did so much for me. Seeing my indecision, he added, "I plan to sleep, madam. I have everything I need." Seeing the sense in letting him sleep, I patted his arm and left him in the quiet and dark of his cabin. Back in my living area, I turned on the computer and poured a glass of ice water for myself. Then, eating a banana, I settled at the desk, entered Germain's login details and navigated to the ship's central registry, where I entered the name of the man in the first wallet and then the second. On a notepad, I jotted down their cabin numbers, checked on Germain again to confirm he was asleep, and slipped quietly out of my suite to do some snooping. Anna had climbed onto a couch and was dozing. I left her there, expecting she would most likely stay put until I returned. I had a carefree skip to my steps as I headed to the elevator bank nearest to my cabin. I was almost 6 weeks into my trip now, so I was half done, but I also had half left, and that was reason for celebration. So many times in the past I had stared through the window of a travel agency to see the giant posters on the walls behind their desks. I had yearned to travel, but trapped inside my marriage, it had not been possible. Now I was doing it, and I might just do it again someday. It was an adventure, made more so because of the occasional capers I found myself involved in, and because of the impossibly handsome captain. Captain Alistair Huntley, a handsome man with a strong body, was just over a year my senior, and to all intents and purposes, we were dating. Saying it in my head put a dent in my jubilant stride, though, because we weren't really dating at all. He was the captain of the ship, and that was his entire life. He slept, he ate, and he captained the ship. We had kissed on several occasions now, but he wanted to keep our relationship quiet, so we were not eating together in public, at least not as a couple, and we were not going to the cinema or a cabaret act or any of the things I wanted to do. As a couple, at the start of things, as they get to know each other, it seemed natural and normal to spend time together on typical dating activities. He was trying, I would concede that, but all too often, when we arranged dinner in my suite, he would be called away, or never even make it, calling to apologise as, once again, there was a matter that only he could attend to. It did not help that he was on his 4th deputy captain in 5 weeks, so I was making allowances for him, but I was very conscious that my time on board was limited. We either got to know each other more quickly and made a decision to commit to something more, or there would be no time to do so. Forcing away a glum frown that threatened to invade my happy face, I reached the first cabin number and fixed a smile in place as I knocked on the door. Knocking on the door at this time of day was highly speculative on my part. I thought it more likely the occupant would be out, but it wasn't far for me to go to find out. It was quiet in the passageway while I waited. The cabin was on deck 18 and close to the stern. There was no natural light in the passageway, but a blast of it hit my face as the door opened because the cabin had windows. It quickly dissipated, though, as the man pulled the door closed behind him, leaving just a crack, so he didn't need to swipe his card or knock to get back in. Looking back at me with an annoyed expression wasn't the man in the wallet's little photo ID, though. He was a shade under 6 feet tall and Asian by race. Though I would struggle to be accurate about his exact heritage, I wanted to say Thailand or Vietnam. I had limited experience to draw from, but his features reminded me of the people I had seen as we came through that area a few days ago. The standout feature, though, was his body. He was muscular. Not like a bodybuilder, but certainly like someone who spent a lot of time in the gym lifting weights, and he wore fitted clothes that made his muscular physique clear to everyone. He didn't look friendly, but I kept my smile in place as I stated my business. "Hello, I'm Patricia. I found this wallet and hoped I could return it to its owner. Perhaps I have the wrong cabin, though." I opened the wallet to read the name. "I'm looking for Dr. Bayani Mendoza." I glanced back up just as the man reached for the wallet. "I'll give it to him," he said gruffly. He was about to snatch it from my hand when I pulled it away. "I'll give it to him in person, thank you. That way I know it went to the right person." His hand grabbed at thin air, and now he really looked unfriendly, his forehead creasing in a deep frown as his top lip curled in a snarl. He took a step forward, but the half-closed door opened again, and a new man clamped a hand on his shoulder. "Come now, Chai. The lady made a reasonable request." With another grimace in my direction, Chai disappeared back inside the room so the new man could fill the doorway. The new man looked just like the first. He might even be his older brother, but he was a couple of inches shorter, just as he looked to be a couple of years older. He had the same body, though, muscular and capable looking. In contrast, he had a smile fixed to his face and looked friendly, almost like someone had just told him a joke and I caught him mid-laugh. "May I see the wallet, please?" he asked. His hands were behind his back and showing no sign that they might try to grab for it, as the last man had. "Of course." I held it up and open for him to see. As he leaned in, I said, "Is your brother all right? He seemed upset." The man was leaning forward to inspect the tiny picture, but shifted his eyes up at my question to look directly at me. Then he straightened, a guarded expression now dominating his features. "You're very perceptive, Mrs. Fisher, Patricia Fisher." I brought the hand with the wallet down as I lifted my other hand to shake. "I think most people would be able to identify you as brothers. You look very alike." He simply nodded. "Dr. Mendoza is inside. I will fetch him if you give me a moment." He was polite about it, but he still closed the door in my face as he moved away. Perhaps they were doing something private, or maybe someone was getting changed. I didn't want to speculate, but it was clear they didn't want me to see inside. Voices coming from inside were muffled but still sounded like they were arguing. I tried to make out what was being said, though I refrained from placing my ear against the door. Telling myself they were probably speaking in a language I didn't know, I let it pass, but I was made to wait, as if Dr. Mendoza was too busy to retrieve his wallet. By the time the door opened again, more than 2 minutes later, I was bored and getting quite peeved. My attitude held in check only by reminding myself that I wouldn't have to wait if I kept my nose out. Nevertheless, I could hear a touch of impatience in my voice when a man resembling the one in the wallet I held finally came to the door. "Dr. Mendoza, thank you for finding the time to see me. I believe this is yours." I handed him the wallet with it open to reveal his picture. "I was able to retrieve this during a sting operation earlier today. Can I ask you a few questions?" Okay. I was stretching the truth and making myself sound like a special forces detective or something, but I had come this far, and I wanted to get a couple of answers. Dr. Mendoza risked a glance behind him at the door, and I dropped my attitude as I realised how nervous he looked. Now what had I stumbled across? "Is everything okay?" I asked, my voice a hushed breath. He stared at me and swallowed, blinking rapidly. Yes, of course. I hadn't noticed my wallet was missing, actually. I can't imagine how I managed to drop it." He continued to blink at me, far more rapidly and frequently than could be natural. My brain told me he was trying to convey something that he couldn't say, but I wasn't getting the message yet. I decided to keep him talking. "Actually, you were probably robbed. There has been a team of pickpockets operating on board for the last few days. Can I ask you to look at someone and—" "Dr. Mendoza." A voice came from inside. It was the older brother, I determined from the calm tone the voice carried. "Time is of the essence. We must press on." The doctor cast his eyes down at the deck, his shoulders slumping in defeat, and when he looked back up, he looked wretched. I'd seen a look like this before, on the face of Riku Takahashi just before he jumped from the back of the ship. My heart caught in my throat as he looked into my eyes. "I must go, I'm afraid." He made some move back through the door, but I grabbed his arm. I wanted answers about Mr. Tracksuit, but right now I was just using that as an excuse to keep his attention. "I need you to look at a short piece of video, Dr. Mendoza. It will take just a few seconds." "Dr. Mendoza," the voice from inside said again, this time with more insistence in it. "I really must go," he apologised. "Our work really is time-sensitive." "What are you working on?" I tried, but my question bounced off a closed door as the man slipped back inside and closed the door. It was incredibly rude, but I wasn't angry or offended. I was curious. There was something going on here, and I needed help to find out what. My gut told me Dr. Mendoza was in some kind of trouble, though I had no idea what kind of trouble it might be. Perhaps Alistair would be able to help me. I wriggled my nose a little as I continued to stare at the closed door. When he slipped back through it, I got a very brief glance inside. The room was filled with laboratory equipment, a centrifuge, some kind of analysing equipment, and a host of other items I couldn't identify but which looked like high-tech medical gear. It had only been a brief glance, but the contents of the room were not normal for people on a cruise, plus the doctor had been very nervous. Leaving the issue to stew in my head for a while, I walked away, taking myself to the cabin of the other man whose wallet I held. In contrast to Dr. Mendoza, the owner was overjoyed to get it back. Where Dr. Mendoza hadn't even thanked me, Semi Batiluna tried to give me all the cash in his wallet as a reward for returning it, and I had to fight off the offer of dinner and cocktails, which he insisted upon several times in a bid to wear me down. I showed him the footage I had of Mr. Tracksuit, but he didn't recognise him. It was a dead end this time, but it wasn't enough to put me off. In the end, the excited Mr. Batiluna settled for a handshake, but tricked me and pulled me into a hug, which his wife then joined. Walking back to my suite, I felt buoyant, but where my thoughts had been filled with the idea that I might prove Mr. Tracksuit was involved, now I couldn't shift the belief that Dr. Mendoza was in trouble, and I was going to have to be the one to see he got help. It was time to interfere.